All right, this is the hippie nerd guy again. Um, I think I dated this girl once, and she said, John, you're just a hippie nerd, just a hippie nerd. I'm like, no, I'm a Jesus hippie nerd. And anyway, my name's Jonathan, and wanted to just share a little bit of my Sunday morning with you. I'm sitting here by the river. Sunday. This is this is kind of my church, if you will. This is where I best connect, um, and I just need nature, and especially, and this is kind of just going out to those people who've experienced loss or heartbreak, and I don't want to go into my story every time, but um, you know, nobody gets to 20, nobody gets to 30, nobody gets to 40 without experiencing heartbreak, and I just wanted to pass on some things that I've experienced, and or maybe some things that could help you. And number one is, um, you know, I finally found something online about the term "let it go," and that's a good term. That's it's almost become a cliche of "let it go," and I think there was even a song about that. Um, and in some ways, it's kind of condescending. And I have a friend who kind of uses that term, and she's taken kind of a good term, and she's kind of used it in kind of a belittling way, like for example, like if let's say that you're going through a bad breakup, or maybe you didn't get a job, and I just listened and said, well, you should just let it go. Like, have you let it go? I mean, I could do that, and that's not going to add anything to your life. In fact, it's going to be just irritating and condescending, and it's rooted in letting go. There's a really good book called The Language of Letting Go. I think her name is Melanie Betty. Very good book. Um, and so, what does letting go look like, and what is it? How do we actually do it? And how does it become something that we're doing from a heart level, and not something from just a sheer intellectual, trinky, gimmicky? Let it go. Let it. How do we actually do it? Um, and so I these are my suggestions, and these are just simply suggestions. And just a guy from the river wanting to let some things go in my own life. Like for example, I went through a really bad custody dispute, and it's been a really hard thing. And if you're a dad, you know that. And then changing careers again. I ran a finance company for 10 years and had to let that go. In fact, a client emailed me today, and she's like, "Hey, John, are you still in business?" I'm like, "No, I let that company go." And the truth is, it was regulated out of business, and the other truth is, I was just it was right at the point that the regulations were 5 or 6 fold. You know, I lost heart. You have to either hire people, and I couldn't seem to hire the right people. I wasn't living in a part of the country that was conducive to running the company, and so employee problems, regulatory, and I let that company go. But maybe you're thinking, well, why is this guy talking about letting his business go? Because I want to move beyond the gimmicky phrase of "let it go," and I want to use this as an example of, um, I built that company. God and I built that company from ground zero for 10 years, and most people don't understand. Most people haven't had a job for 10 years, much less built a business. In fact, if you look at the statistics of building a business, um, most businesses fail the first 2 or 3 years, and I was in the most regulated business in the country, one of the most, and I lasted 10 years. And for a man to let that business go and let that income go and kind of to move on, that's difficult. And so, just to let you know, I know what pain is. I know what it's like to lose my kids in a custody dispute. I know what it's like to lose a business. So how do we actually live spirituality beyond just a bumper sticker and a Facebook quote? And I would say two things, and these are things I'm learning and I'm trying to implement, because it's all about the implementation. I mean, Facebook is full of know-it-alls. YouTube is full of know-it-alls. What I think the real power comes down to is, how are we implementing it? And if we're not moving that energy from potential energy to kinetic or real energy, then we're full of shit. We just have spiritual hobbies. We're not really finding transformation. So, this video is for the people who don't want spirituality to be an identity, don't want it to be we don't want it to be, it's not a part of an image. It's something we really want from our heart. So how do we let go? And I learned this recently and said, instead of saying let it go in some sort of little bullshit way, letting go in the context of connecting with those feelings. And this is something I read last night. It was on the Elephant Journal, and it says instead of letting go, we should acknowledge those feelings. Then we should accept them, and then we should integrate. Acknowledging, accepting, and integrate. And so, for example, if I were to, like this morning, I grieved over that business I lost. A client. It's a compliment when a client comes back to you and says, "Hey, we want you to help us again." Well, after 10 years, I have to say, "Sorry, that business is no longer." So I have to acknowledge, yeah, that hurts. And I think even just taking that step to say it hurts is healthier than denying that or making a joke or whatever. So learning to acknowledge our things that hurt us, learning to accept it, and that's a really, really hard one. There's a lot to that. And these are not easy things. This is like me saying, well, yeah, just go learn to ski or go learn to ride a bike. I mean, these are skills. And if we look at spirituality as learning skills, I think it moves it out of the esoteric range or area, So if you're dealing with heartbreak, just acknowledge the heartbreak. Even on this hike, I'm missing my kids, and my kids are growing up without me, and having to rely on YouTube just to send them love messages. And I remembered something that Thad Golas said in his book, and I'm a big Thad Golas fan. Let me wrap this video up. And I love this advice because he's so succinct. And the book is called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. And he says, the only thing we have to change is do something with love. And, if you're like me, you're very analytical, 8, 7, 7, 8 on the Enneagram, whatever your personality profile is. Learning how to say, okay, I got to go back to the brass tacks. I got to make this simple. This can't be complicated. Spirituality cannot just become calculus. It needs to be addition and subtraction. And today I'm in kind of an addition and subtraction world. And so it's like, okay, I'm upset over my business, so I need to acknowledge that. Doesn't mean I got to fix it. I got to just acknowledge it. And that's where I'm at. And then Thad Golas said, well, just do something with love. So missing my kids, I decided, I'm going to send them a love message. And I'm going to send them, so you might see love messages to me, my kids, and so it's like, well, I could bitch and complain about, all the things that are true. I could talk about how in Texas 2503 is not enforced. I could talk about how many families that one regulation rips apart. I could grieve over not seeing my children for Christmas and their birthdays, and I could bitch about interlocutory orders, and I could, try to educate the world on the need for men's rights in civil trials. And everybody talks about Black Lives Matter, and they do, and everybody talks about Jew Lives Matter, and they do, and I could bitch and complain and say men's rights matter, and they do, but ultimately, Thad Golas says, what I have to do is do something with love. So today, I'm going to send some messages out there and say, hey guys, don't fall for the bullshit, let it go shit. I mean, it's true, but it's incomplete. We have to learn how to let go. So go pick up Melody's book of The Language of Letting Go. And finally, let me just end, maybe just acknowledge a feeling. Maybe you just need to acknowledge something and then take a meditative walk with it. Maybe, I don't know what you need to do. But learning to let go, these are spiritual skills, and I want to be a part of helping people learn spiritual skills beyond just the rhetoric, because the rhetoric doesn't get you through the hard times. The rhetoric gets you likes on Facebook, the rhetoric gets you bumper stickers, but it's about the real life world and impacting that and changing that. So anyway, if you have any questions, maybe if you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Love to see how far these videos go. I'm kind of, I'm propping myself up on my knee. So if you see these, I'm real close, or I've got a booger or something, or just excuse these. These are just trying to be authentic videos, and really just my attempt to send love And maybe I can say something today that can help and encourage somebody out there. Because if the Bible kind of comes down to one fundamental principle, and that we reap what we sow, and we have to. I want to send love, and who knows what the legislature is going to do with Texas civil codes, and that's custody shit. Who cares? What I have to do is, just send love and send light, And I want to just encourage you, no matter where you're at, letting go is not an easy process. Don't let anybody throw that little bullshit phrase at you in a condescending way. Learn a skill, though. Maybe learn a skill, and as you get stronger, and as we get stronger, that's how we learn to let go. And anyway, I'll talk more about this later. If you have any questions, my name is Jonathan Fibinogi, like I said, remember this. If you forget everything else, we reap what we sow. So just go sow light. Maybe go, send love in some capacity today. And when you send love in some capacity, you're overcoming the darkness on some level. Because I'll leave you with this Martin Luther King quote. It's my favorite quote, and I love his story, but I also love how succinct he has wrapped up spirituality in one quote. And excuse me, my mouth is dry. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, he says, light casts out darkness. He says, hate does not cast out darkness. Darkness does not cast out darkness. It takes light to cast out darkness. And, that's a really true thing. And so we got to be careful that we're not adding to darkness with self-pity or anger or rage. And anger's good, but rage can kind of make things worse, and maybe rambling videos make things worse. But when I was a kid, I used to sit in these sermons and these church services that lasted forever, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take 12, 13 minutes, 14 minutes and just send some love. And maybe you just want to see the river, or maybe you want to know that you're not the only one that's learning how to let go. And I think that's a great way to think about it, learning to let go, and learning skills, and sending light, and being conscious of the light, taking meditation and cleaning up our diets. And I think that's the path I'm on. And then I realized, wow, this is really the path of spirituality. The Jesus character makes sense now. How he would go to the mountains and pray. He was modeling for me how to live. He wasn't just some guy in Afghanistan. And when Jesus talks about the Beatitudes and you read the Psalms, find your favorite Psalm. Do something with light today. Do something with light, and choose an intention. And I know this sounds sometimes rambly, and I know it sounds repetitive, but I'm 40 years old now, and I found 10 years ago when I was my 30s, a friend of mine invited me into a 12-step meeting, and all they talked about was acceptance, and that was God's way of bringing me into acceptance. And page 417 of the big book, I wasn't an alcoholic, but that was the voice of God, her bringing. Well, here I am, 41, and I'm still learning. Acceptance is good, but the first step is acknowledging something. You have to acknowledge it. And today I'm just saying, I'm acknowledging that my heart is broken over some family drama, having to start a new career. I'm acknowledging that. And I'm also acknowledging that all that pain is going to have to be fuel for something constructive. Because if it's not constructive, it's going to become destructive. And that pain is immense, and that's real. So, another good author is Emmett Fox. And I like his books. And one of his books, he says, there's only two emotions, fear and love. And then he says in another place, and I thought this was so succinct. Let me wrap up on this video because I don't want to make it too long, like my sermons when I was a kid. But he says, at the end of the day, we have to choose between doing something constructive or destructive. So if you don't know what the light is, or you don't know what love is, or you don't know what letting go is, just do something constructive. there you go.